The German shepherd's growl rolled low across the asphalt as the handcuffs snapped around her wrists. Patrol lights flashed red and blue against the quiet storefronts of Brier Hollow, a town that liked to pretend nothing ugly ever happened there. The deputies thought they were putting down a threat. What they were really doing was stepping into a storm they couldn't see. "Control your dog," one of them barked. Ranger didn't lunge. He didn't bare his teeth wildly. He stood planted beside her, muscles tight, amber eyes locked on the men who dared to grab his partner. 7 years of combat training pulsed beneath his thick coat. 7 years of clearing buildings, detecting explosives, and shielding the woman who now stood calmly in cuffs. "Ranger, stay." Her voice was steady, but it cost her something. The dog's chest trembled. Every instinct screamed at him to protect. Instead he obeyed. To understand how Brier Hollow reached this moment, you have to rewind 3 weeks. Lieutenant Commander Elena Cruz had not come to town looking for trouble. After 12 years in the Navy SEALs, she had earned more commendations than she cared to count. She had led extraction teams through hostile territory, made decisions under fire, and buried friends whose names she still whispered at night. When her service ended, she wanted silence, mountains, and a place where the only explosions came from summer thunderstorms. Ranger rode shotgun in her aging truck when she arrived. He was more than a military working dog. He was her shadow, her shield, the steady weight against her chest when nightmares dragged her back to desert roads and shattered convoys. He had once pulled her from burning wreckage despite shrapnel in his flank. They had healed together. They had survived together. Brier Hollow looked peaceful. One main street. A diner with faded curtains. Locals who smiled too quickly and looked away too fast. It took Elena less than a week to notice the pattern. Conversation stopped when patrol cars rolled by. Business owners slipped envelopes across counters. Fear lingered like smoke that never cleared. She had seen this before. Not overseas. At home. And she knew bullies always tested the wrong person eventually. Sheriff Dalton Price tested her on a Tuesday morning. Elena sat inside the Brier Hollow diner, Ranger resting beneath the table, when the sheriff and his deputy swaggered in. Price was thick around the middle, confidence bloated from years without consequence. Deputy Nolan Graves followed, younger and eager, the kind who mistook intimidation for strength. Price stopped at her table. "New in town?" "Just passing through," Elena replied evenly. "That so?" "We've had complaints about that dog." Ranger hadn't moved. He lay silent, disciplined, trained to ignore chaos unless commanded otherwise. Price tipped his coffee cup, accidentally. Scalding liquid splashed near Ranger's paws. Then his boot nudged the shepherd's shoulder. The growl that answered was controlled, precise, and terrifying. The diner froze. Elena said quietly, "Ranger, easy?" Instantly the growl faded. Ranger's posture shifted into calm readiness, eyes still locked on the sheriff. Something flickered across Price's face. Not fear. Recognition of resistance. Over the next days, harassment escalated. Her truck was pulled over twice for imaginary violations. A code inspector visited the cabin she rented. A warning about dangerous animals was taped to her door. It was textbook pressure designed to force compliance or departure. What Price didn't realize was that Elena had spent years dismantling threats more sophisticated than small-town corruption. She began documenting everything. Dates, badge numbers, conversations. Ranger's tactical harness carried more than identification tags. A discreet camera recorded each interaction, streaming footage to a secure server maintained by former teammates who still owed her favors. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon. Elena walked along Main Street when a cruiser cut her off. Price stepped out slowly. "You're under investigation for obstruction and failure to comply," he announced. "Hands behind your back." "This is harassment," she replied. "Turn around." She could have resisted. Instead she complied. Metal bit into her wrists. When Deputy Graves grabbed Ranger's collar to drag him toward animal control, the shepherd lunged, not to attack but to reach her. A desperate whine tore from his chest. His paws scraped the pavement as if he could claw his way between her and danger. "Ranger, stay," she whispered. His body shook violently. But he sat. The crowd gathered quickly. Brier Hollow wasn't used to public scenes and this one felt different. The deputies mistook the silence for approval. It was something else entirely. Elena knelt as far as the cuffs allowed and pressed her forehead to Ranger's. His breathing came fast, panicked, confused. He did not understand corruption or procedure. He understood one truth: his partner was being taken. "I need you to trust me," she murmured. The command hung between them like a blade. Stay. Ranger's whine broke hearts. Slowly, painfully, he remained seated while they pulled her toward the cruiser. His eyes never left hers as the door slammed shut. What Sheriff Price didn't know was that every second had already been transmitted. The coffee spill. The threats. The unlawful arrest. By nightfall, the footage reached a federal oversight unit that had been quietly tracking rural abuse of power. Elena had alerted them weeks earlier when patterns began to surface. By dawn, unmarked vehicles rolled into Brier Hollow. State investigators entered the sheriff's office without spectacle. Files were seized. Financial records uncovered years of extortion. Testimonies followed once fear loosened its grip. Deputy Graves folded first. Price's confidence collapsed shortly after. When Elena walked out of holding that afternoon, cuffs removed and charges dismissed, Ranger nearly knocked her off her feet. He circled her wildly, whining in relief, pressing his body against her legs as if anchoring himself to proof she was real and safe. "You did good," she whispered, laughing through tears. "You trusted me." Word spread fast. Business owners stopped paying envelopes. Windows opened. Voices returned. Elena didn't stay for praise. Service had never been about applause. It was about stepping forward when others stepped back. As she drove out of town, Ranger resting his head on her lap, she reflected on courage. Real courage wasn't loud. It wasn't reckless. Sometimes it looked like sitting still when every instinct demanded you fight. Brier Hollow learned that lesson. So did the men who thought they were bullying a stranger. They never realized they had tried to intimidate a warrior who never stopped serving. And a dog who would follow her anywhere.